Hey everyone, welcome back to Those Fake Nerds. I'm your host, Brian, and I think in this day and age, we all kind of accept that we don't truly own any of the digital things that we purchase. It's not like buying a Blu ray or a physical game. In fact, even buying physical games nowadays really are just like codes or licenses to download games, but Ubisoft wants to make it really, really clear to you that you do not own shit in this world. So, this is from game developer and Chris Kier, who's their news editor. And it says Ubisoft tells the crew players that they never actually owned the game. Ubisoft has issued quite the rebuttal to a pair of players who are attempting to sue the French publisher for shutting down multiplayer racer The Crew. Last year, two players in California filed a lawsuit against the company for prematurely shutting down the title, claiming that they and thousands of others had been left with a skeleton of what you thought you paid for. They essentially argued that The Crew should have been left in a playable offline state rather than being delisted and taken offline. Ubisoft claims that it was necessary to wind down the 2014 release because of the server infrastructure and licensing constraints, but noted it had maintained support for almost a decade. For those two players in California, it was a decision they felt totally barred access to the product they paid money for. Imagine you buy a pinball machine and years later, you enter your den to go play and only to discover that all the paddles are missing. The pinball and bumpers are gone, and the monitor that proudly display your unattainable high score is removed to reach the original lawsuit. Turns out the pinball machine manufacturer decided to come into your home, gut the insides of the pinball machine, and remove your ability to play the game that you bought and thought you owned. In a response filed in February, Ubisoft suggests that argument that The Crew would remain playable indefinitely is misleading and claims it was exclusively selling temporary access to a product rather than outright ownership. Plaintiffs do not allege that the Ubisoft made any statements indicating that consumers would in fact obtain unfettered access to Crew if they purchased a physical copy, reads the company's response. To the contrary, the packaging made clear that Ubisoft's could limit access. This is fatal to plaintiffs' FLA, UCL, and CLR claims, CLRA claims. Plaintiffs' entire theory of the case is based on the faulty assumption that buying a physical disc entitles purchasers to infinite access to play the game. Ubisoft claims that the flawed assumption doesn't equate to misrepresentation under California law. The company reiterated that it was selling a license to a product as opposed to outright ownership. This isn't uncommon in the video game industry, but the lawsuit highlights a fundamental divide between the companies selling these licenses and consumers making purchasing decisions. The plaintiffs have since responded to Ubisoft's argument with a photograph of the Crew's packaging, which shows the activation code for the title won't expire until 2099. They claim it's an example of Ubisoft indicating the Crew would remain playable during this time and long thereafter. So, what are your thoughts on that particular court case? I do think that the code being active to 2099 does indicate that in some way you should expect this game to exist either offline or still online for an extended period of time. Otherwise, why put that in there? So that could be very interesting. But ultimately, I think, well, it sucks. At this point, we just have to just go forward and expect that none of these games are permanent. Even games that you can play offline now may one day be taken down in the future, which is, of course, extremely disappointing. But that's just how developers are these days, especially where, like, they're all moving towards these games that have persistent online aspects to them, that have, live service elements, and those really can only exist as long as the service is live, which is disappointing. I do like, I believe Suicide Squad killed the Justice League when it was being shut down. They were editing it so that you could still play offline, which I think is very nice, and I think more companies should think about doing something like that. But ultimately, I think we just have to, as consumers, accept that despite it sucking and despite our feelings being like, I bought this, I should be able to play it forever, just like old video games that people bought, nobody's ever on our side as consumers, really. And, if a company like Ubisoft has the, gumption to fight something like this, and the will to fight something like this, the means to fight something like this, and that makes me extremely pessimistic about a ruling ever coming out on the side of the players for something like this. So, what are your thoughts on this lawsuit? Do you think the plaintiffs could possibly win? Are you more optimistic than me, or are you kind of in a similar boat with me where you think that probably no matter what, the courts are going to side with the big company, and we're just going to have to, as consumers, mentally prepare for all of our favorite games to be shut down? Let me know your thoughts about all of this in the comments. I'm Brian. I'm a fake nerd. This has been some real news. If you liked it, make sure you subscribe. We have videos like this coming out all the time on this channel. Then, if you're somehow not tired of hearing me talk, check out our main channel, which is Wiki Good Everything, our sports channel, which is Wiki Good Sports, and our podcasting channel, which is Better Radio. We will see you in the next one.